My guest today is Aleksandra Ceho. Aleksandra, you are an astrologer, spiritual guide, and international instructor. You have over 20 years of professional experience and you combine astrology, Hermetic philosophy, and martial arts to help entrepreneurs and leaders align their highest potential and navigate life with clarity and precision. You are passionate about helping people use astrology not as prediction, but as a tool for self-mastery and personal growth. Aleksandra, welcome to the show. Such a pleasure to have you with me today.
Thank you so much, Agi. It's so wonderful to be here and to be speaking with you today. Thank you for that honor.
The honor is all mine. I'm looking forward to exploring with you, if I can put it like in one sentence, how this ancient wisdom that you have studied and you teach can guide modern leadership, modern decision making, among other aspects. What I would like to begin with, you describe astrology as a tool for self-mastery and not prediction. So let's start by this. What does this distinction mean, and how can it change one's, let's say, comprehension or perception of astrology?
So we were just speaking a little bit before, and so to kind of, I guess, fill in everyone in as for a little conversation before we began. One of the things that I have observed about astrology, especially in its modern depictions, is that it really emphasizes itself either as a personality typology, and you know, we can kind of thank some of the marketing world for that, because that made it a little more palatable for people. Mm-hmm. And also it's really emphasized some of the shadow aspects of people, and kind of celebrated lower aspects of their nature, and provided, I guess you could say, that ego satisfaction. However, that was not the original intention and purpose of astrology. And so in order to kind of share that with you, I need to take you back several thousand years to a figure that was called Hermes Trismegistus. And so if anyone has ever delved into some of the older aspects of spiritual philosophy, Hermes Trismegistus is this mythical figure who first brought the teachings of astrology and alchemy and theurgy to the planet. And astrology was meant to help us understand the divine within. And so Hermes Trismegistus spoke of us as being royal beings, as being divine beings. And astrology was a tool by which we could actually embody the divine. And so we are born, we come onto this planet. Every one of us has purpose and meaning to our lives, but we forget. And so astrology is a tool that was meant to help us remember the divine, and not just remember the divine, but to learn how to embody it and practically make it happen in this physical world. And so through, for example, the reading of the natal chart and understanding the strengths, the gifts, the qualities that you were born with, and how to work with them so that you can enact goodness in the world. And when we enact goodness in the world, that means success. That means loving relationships. That means health and greater balance, and also personal fulfillment, of course. And so this was the original meaning of astrology, you know, many, many years ago. Now, originally it was often saved for royalty or for people who were in positions where they held responsibility for the care and welfare of others. And so astrologers served kings and queens and statesmen and that kind of thing, because in order to care for others, it really requires the best of your gifts and abilities. You have to maximize your gifts and traits in order to care for others, to make decisions, to support what's happening in a kingdom. And where you have personal failings, that would show up in what happened to your people. And so in our modern days, this also applies to your business. Where you have areas that are not as strong or not as developed, that's also going to show up in your business. It's going to show up in how you care for your family. It's going to show up in how you care for yourself. And so this is why astrology is such a relevant tool nowadays, because everyone is in this position where they are creators and bear responsibility.
Thank you. There are quite a few things there that you mentioned. What I would like to let's clarify a little bit more the misconceptions, let's say, that people have in astrology as it is presented now compared to how it was when it started, the original meaning, as you said. You mentioned, and that's what I wanted to maybe expand a little bit more, that astrology as it is now has, you mentioned something about shadows, about some negative aspects there. So can we go through them so that we can understand exactly what you mean, and then we can look at how, let's not, I won't go further than that. Let's clarify this first and I will move on.
Yes, of course. So I hope you don't mind. I'm going to use a story to kind of illustrate this.
Mm-hmm.
So a long time ago, I was in California and I was studying with an astrology group, and I had made a friend. And this friend was not as skilled in terms of casting her chart. And so she had made a mistake, and she had mistakenly believed something about her chart that was incorrect. And so, oh,
I can hear you.
And so what happened was she was being particularly stubborn and telling me that I was incorrect. And in doing that, I asked her, "Why are you being so stubborn about this?" And she looks at me, Agi, and she says, "I'm a Taurus. I'm supposed to be stubborn." And so she was using her astrological sign to justify a negative behavior. And so this is what I mean by people using astrology as a tool to kind of reaffirm the shadow or reaffirm the lower aspects of themselves, or to treat it as a box. Because being stubborn is not always to your benefit, of course. And so in this case, she was denying herself valuable information because she was convinced that she was right, even though evidence suggested otherwise.
That's a very good, I think a very clear example of, so thank you for providing that. So if then we move on to how astrology was, the original meaning was, as you said, how much of that original meaning can still be applied today? Because obviously we neither have kings or queens now, royalty, and of course now there is a very much developed science compared to this, to those times, which I suppose in some ways it has also cast a little. I don't want to go to the skepticists because they're not listening to this conversation. So, but all I'm trying to say is that how it was thousands of years ago and how are things now, there is some difference. So, how much of that can still be applied now?
Oh my goodness. Well, one of the things to recognize about astrology is that it works with the power of archetypes. And archetypes apply to us throughout time. And many of the archetypes, I mean, in our modern days, we kind of are creating new archetypes, not always healthy ones, and that's a separate conversation. But for example, when I say that someone's motherly, well, what that means today versus what it meant hundreds of years ago or thousands of years ago, there's still similar qualities that we can derive from that.
Mm-hmm.
When I say that someone's a warrior, it's the same thing. There are certain qualities in that archetype that are recognizable throughout time and also throughout cultures. And so astrology works with the power of archetypes, and it looks at how these archetypes are living inside of you, what their skills and qualities are, because even as a warrior, there are certain aspects of that that might be emphasized in your chart as opposed to others. And all of these archetypes are alive inside of us. The moon symbolizes our mothering qualities. The Mars symbolizes our warrior qualities. Mercury symbolizes the god of intelligence that exists within us. And the natal chart helps to specify the exact qualities that each of those archetypes embodies, and then also their relative strengths and how they work together.
I want to ask a little bit more about, you said about the natal chart.
Yes.
Which I suppose, and I will take it perhaps to a little bit more practical level now. Perhaps someone listening to us right now that they are more familiar with, the zodiac cycle. I think many people who haven't really explored, shall we say, astrology are familiar with the 12 signs of the zodiac, and you mentioned the stubbornness characteristic of, and so from that, I'm Pisces, by the way, so I can there are some I can see some things that I have adopted perhaps as a description of my zodiac. Let's not go into that right now. I wanted to come back and ask a bit more about the natal chart. What kind of information, actually I will go past the word information because it's very weak. What kind of wisdom can one obtain by getting that natal chart? And I mean wisdom related to their life, their purpose, their even their decision making.
Oh, yes, of course. That's an amazing question. So the purpose of the natal chart is to help you understand the qualities that you have come into this world with. And some of those qualities you have built on and you have developed as you have grown through life. And so, for example, if you have taken a career, say, in the health field, right? So there are certain qualities that you will have embraced and embodied. So, for example, empathy and the ability to care for others is part of that kind of career path, right? But also analytical skill sets. Whereas instead, perhaps within you, there was also the capacity to be an engineer. And so instead of developing the empathy piece, perhaps you would have really focused on those skills of analytical intelligence, and also the grounded, more detailed perceptions that are necessary in that kind of career. But then also there could have been the capacity to be an artist within you. And so instead of either of those, perhaps you would have embraced more of your creativity. So the natal chart gives you insight into all of the traits and qualities that reside within you, whether or not you have developed them as a result of your life experiences. And so one of the things is that it can be incredibly freeing for someone, especially when they are navigating a potential life change or a career change. And so sometimes I have people come to me because they are navigating a career change and they want to understand themselves in a different way, seek out a different path and different purpose. Sometimes, and this actually happens more often than I realized, I have empty nesters come to me. And so their parenting role, I'm not going to say that it came to an end, but rather that it's taken a step back because their children are independent now. And now there is this freedom and time for exploration. Now, I also have people come to me as well because they have aspects of themselves that they're grappling with. And so one of the big ones that I deal with rather frequently is anxiety. And so I have people get in, work with me. Aside from my business practice, I have people work with me because they are grappling with parts of themselves or issues that are recurrent, and they are trying to understand what's happening. And the astrological premise behind any repetitive issue is often that there is a skill or quality that is not being properly supported. So one of the aspects that I can give in with anxiety is the example is that someone has intuitive intelligence. And what I mean by that is that they have a sensation of what is to come. But it's undeveloped, unsupportive, and so it's vague. And in the vagarity of it, their mind is able to imprint scary outcomes because of the vagueness of what they receive. And so when I work with people who are experiencing anxiety, and specifically in that form, because there's multiple reasons it can happen astrologically, but when I work with people who are experiencing that because of that intuitive awareness, what I have them do is I have them take it a step further. So instead of leaving it as a vague sensation of something that's coming or something that's happening, I teach them how to work with it and to take it a step farther so they can specify. And when they know what they're dealing with, there's no anxiety anymore.
That's a great example, and I'm glad you took the conversation to that direction, because I wanted also to ask you. You talked about people in life change or in transition, and I want to to ask about two specific, let's say, types or categories of or stages perhaps that people find themselves into. And the first one, and I would like to ask you how specifically astrology can help this kind of situations. And the first one is someone who is at a crossroads. They have not yet embarked on that transition, and you mentioned the empty nesters, I will now steer it towards the career change transitions. So many people, and certainly people who listen to this podcast, are in that category that have, attained external success. They have ticked the boxes. They've got the career, the finances, the house, the family, whatever else they thought success was, or what society teaches us. But still, there is some, feeling of disconnect, some emptiness, perhaps inside, something that they can't necessarily name, but something not quite right. So they are considering, some change. But as I said, they are at the crossroads. Tell us how someone like this can, or what can they gain, perhaps by learning and investing in learning more about astrology in that particular case.
Yeah. So one of the first things that I contemplate when I work with them is their age. Because there are certain cycles within astrology, you could consider them to be life cycles. And so when someone hits the age of 40 to about 44, there are a series of astrological events that are life cycles that are considered to be responsible for what we call the midlife crisis. And so if someone is in that age group, one of the very first things that I do is I look at these astrological events. So, for example, one of them is called the Uranus opposition. And the Uranus opposition is all about personal authenticity and new archetypes that are seeking emergence. And so if someone is experiencing that, how I deal with them is very different from someone who's not in that age group, and is not experiencing what we call astrological transits and genuinely is seeking something that is more aligned with purpose and better suited to them. And so if you are in that age group of about 40 to 44 and you are considering, a major career change or a major family change and that kind of thing, I always tell people you need to think about this very slowly. Now, if a new archetype is seeking emergence, it's not that you can't make a career change, it's that you do it with intention, you don't burn bridges. Because that's part of what this life cycle has a tendency to do with people, is that they suddenly decide, that's it, I'm done. They quit their job, they initiate a divorce, and then they try and build something new. And so I always tell them, build the bridge ahead of you first before you burn the one behind you. Now, for someone else who's not in that age group of 40 to 44, that's when I look at the primary archetypes within their natal chart. And so in order to cast a natal chart, I need their date of birth, their time, and their location. And what I do is I look at where are the planets? Where was what's called the rising sign or the ascendant, which is where the eastern horizon was pointing at Earth. I need to know these things because these give me hints about the primary archetypes that are alive inside of someone. Agi, I think of people as a play, like one of Shakespeare's plays. And within that play, there are major characters and there are minor characters. So I want to know who the major characters are because there's more than one. And usually your career and your family will involve one of those major characters or major archetypes within you, but it's not the only one that's there. And so more success can be found when you embody one of those additional archetypes. And so when someone comes to me and they're contemplating that kind of career change, this is when I look at the additional archetypes that are major characters in their chart. And that's when I make suggestions as to directions that they can take. And which ones are also more likely to be successful, by the way, because not every archetype is necessarily going to lead you to success.
Thank you. That's a very detailed answer. I will say from my experience, when I was 41, 42, 43, that was exactly when things, they started changing at 41. By 43, it was a full change. So I could certainly relate there when you were talking about that 42, 44. As I believe many people, perhaps they haven't realized it, but it is... this is great. I very much understood what you said about the emerging archetypes. If someone is, let's say in their early 50s and they are contemplating, I would like to ask now about the next level, another category of people that have gone past that, undecisiveness, and they have embarked on that career change. And they are in the thick of it, in the transition, in that messy period that the old, identity and job has gone. The new one has not really emerge, at least not clearly. So they're dealing with uncertainty, self-doubt, fears. I'm sure you know this very well from people you work with. Tell us again about the insight that astrology can give for someone in that situation.
Yeah. So that's when I begin working with people using the art of astrological forecasting. So the natal chart helps you to understand who you are. And that's important. If you don't know who you are, you can't make good choices for yourself. And so once you have more of that semblance of who you are and you've made the decisions, then you have to go about executing those decisions. And that's not always easy. And this is where astrological forecasting can very much come into play. And so I have helped many clients who have transitioned between careers or stayed in the same industry, but perhaps have left to start their own company and that kind of thing. And so astrological forecasting is incredibly useful because it gives me information on when to act on certain things in order to receive the best possible outcome or the best possible result. And so, I have a very good client of mine, had worked in the engineering world, left to start his own company. It ended up getting recruited after that anyways. But in that time of uncertainty, especially when things are not moving, Agi, I know exactly the time you're talking about, because that's when there's the highest chance for them to experience regret and to potentially go back to something that's not right for them because they haven't figured out how to build what is right. And so when I work with my clients using astrological forecasting, a good part of it is laying out the strategy of how to make it happen, but then also helping to guide their emotions too. Because creation is not easy. And if you are trying to build a new life, that is going to bring out all sorts of things about you, how you feel about yourself. When you're trying to create something new, every part of you gets put on display. Where your successes are, that's where you'll see your strengths. But if things aren't progressing quite the way you want them to, well, that's going to be revelatory of the areas that haven't been developed in your life. And it is so easy to delve into self-judgment in those circumstances. And so when I work with forecasting, part of my role is to keep them in that creator mode and to hold them accountable to, well, this is what you've said you're going to do. And so this is what we're working on. And how you feel about yourself, don't allow that self-judgment to cloud you from taking the actions that you need to take. And so, yes, forecasting, a big part of it is laying out strategy and helping my clients see the blind spots and where their emotions might step in. And then also a good part of the forecasting work that I do is holding them accountable to the life that they are trying to create, because not everyone is very good at holding themselves accountable. And so sometimes they need to be able to report back to somebody and say, okay, you know what? Yes, Aleksandra. Okay, yes, I did it. I promise you I did it.
100% accountability to ourselves is the most difficult accountability there is, because we are the easiest person to lie to and we do it all the time.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit more about, you mentioned something about guiding the emotions during that period. Tell us a bit more about this.
Yeah. Well, like you mentioned, Agi, when someone's navigating a life change, that really opens their psyche. and it lays everything out for them. It lays out what they value. It lays out their strengths, their undeveloped areas. And, there's always a little bit of the creator in what's created. And well, there's many Greek mythologies about that. If we go back to, to the creation of humanity, it is said that we inherited some of our faults from Prometheus and his three brothers. And so there's always a little bit of the creator in what is created. And this very much applies to our life. There's a saying in Hermetic philosophy, as within, so without. And the thing about that is it's very easy to emphasize the negative and to generate negative emotion, especially if things are not proceeding quite the way we envisioned that they would. I think in everyone's head, when they're making a big life change, they see themselves like taking off, like they're on a plane and everything's amazing and they're free and that kind of thing. And then they encounter the first bump and it's like, oh, this isn't going quite the way that I thought it would. And so in order to create a new, and I love how we're having a very kind of metaphysical kind of chat here, but in order to create a new, because what you think and feel is going into the creation, it is essential that self-doubt, self-hatred, self-judgment do not become part of the inner conversation, because that absolutely taints what you create on the other side of it. The creator is always in the creation.
Aleksandra, this is profound. Thank you so much for this. This is extremely insightful. What's something practical you would advise someone to do to, you said about what they feel and think goes into the creation, and the creation, part of the creator is in that. So practically, someone who realizes that and wants to not to go there, and not include those dark or negative, let's say, aspects in the creation, what's something practical one can do?
Well, two things. Number one, meditation. Meditation is an incredible tool because it teaches you how to not take your mind seriously. I'm sure you've experienced this. I know I have. I know whoever is listening has experienced this. Sometimes we have repetitive thoughts. And sometimes those repetitive thoughts are really negative, whether it's about others or about ourselves. And we have to learn how to not take those thoughts seriously. And so meditation kind of teaches you to just kind of dismiss them. It's a really incredible tool. Now, number two is why we need to be able to dismiss those thoughts. And one of the things that I really like to tell, my clients and the people that I work with is that you can't trust everything that your mind says to you. Your mind is a paparazzi. And it's taking pictures constantly. And you know how the paparazzi will take a picture of a celebrity as they're like kind of turning around and then their face looks really awkward. And then they'll say, they're on drugs again. And that might not be the truth. Well, your mind does the same thing. And so it will take experiences, it will take sensations, observations, perceptions, and it may not always be completely truthful about them. Your mind has its own biases, and it will lean towards those biases, just like a paparazzi leans towards scandalous. and so your mind does the same thing. And so meditation is incredibly important because you can't always listen to the paparazzi between your ears. It is not always correct, it is not always truthful, and it is not always friendly to you either. And when you learn how to not always listen to that paparazzi, then you get the chance to start listening to the divine part within you. And Epictetus, spoke about this private deity inside of you that's always watching and is always looking out for you. And when you learn how to dismiss the mind and to not always listen to it, then you get to hear the actual wisdom that is inside of you. And that's the part of you that needs to be listened to.
Silence the mind and the soul will speak. That's what
Exactly.
is said. This is, Aleksandra, this is such a wonderful conversation, and I mentioned already very insightful. So once again, I will appreciate you for this. Where would you like to direct the listener that has been fascinated by all this and wants to learn more?
Well, I would be honored to connect with anybody who would like to learn more. And so you can find me at astrologerroyale.com. And from there, I have actually a free ebook that you are welcome to download. It is called Star Powered Resilience, and it is a zodiac inspired guide to understanding your professional strengths and talents, and also how to mitigate stress. And my pro tip is, if you happen to know the rest of your chart, including your Mercury and Mars signs, that you read those signs as well, because they will add some extra layers of depth and uniqueness to your understanding.
Thank you. And before I start wrapping up, I do have a couple of quick questions I always ask. And the first one is, what does personal development mean to you?
To me, it means embodying the divine within.
And hypothetically, if you could go back in time and meet your 18-year-old self, what's one piece of advice you would give her?
Oh my goodness, that's an amazing question. Well, that 18-year-old self was pretty much around the time that I found my calling and purpose. So I think I'd just tell her, hey, you're on the right track. I was lucky.
I was about to say, when you said that, is a very, but then again, I think each of us has their own path, and perhaps it's not luck that dictates that. So, Aleksandra, I want to thank you very much. This has been a very insightful, I think I've said it 3 times already, conversation. I want to wish you all the very best with everything you do from now on. What I would like, actually, I will give it to you for your parting words and some actionable wisdom to the listener, something that you would like to leave them with.
Oh my, well, I hope you don't mind. I think I'm going to leave them with the words of Epictetus.
Why would I mind?
Whenever you close your doors and turn out your lights, remember, never say to yourself that you are alone. You're not. God is inside, and so is your private deity, and neither of them requires light to watch you by. This is the deity who deserves your pledge of allegiance as soldiers swear before the Caesar. If they want to be paid, they must swear to put the emperor's safety first. You, however, who have been chosen to receive an abundance of blessings, why not swear a similar oath? And why not reaffirm the commitment? You have an abundance of blessings that are available to you in life. Choose that private deity. Choose that divine. Live your light and don't worry about the shadow. Choose that every day and have gratitude for all the gifts that you have. That is the best that I can leave you with.
Thank you so much.